You're too old to handle this, Margaret. Just step aside and let someone capable take over. Those words from my daughter-in-law cut deeper than any knife I'd used in my 40 years of cooking Thanksgiving dinners. I smiled quietly and nodded that morning, but what I did next left my entire family in complete shock. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Stay until the very end of this story and comment below what state you're watching from. I want to see how far this reaches across the country. At 70 years old, I never imagined I'd be told I was too incompetent, too feeble, too past my prime to do the one thing that had defined me as the matriarch of our family for over 4 decades. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, just 3 days before what should have been our 43rd annual Whitmore family Thanksgiving. The November sun was barely peeking through the kitchen windows of my home in Maplewood Heights when I heard the front door open. I wasn't expecting anyone this early. It was only 7:30 in the morning. But I knew immediately from the sharp click of expensive heels on my hardwood floors exactly who had let herself in with the spare key I'd given her last Christmas. Margaret? Are you awake? My daughter-in-law Veronica's voice carried from the entryway with that particular tone she used when she was about to tell me something she'd already decided I had no say in. I wiped my flour-dusted hands on the vintage apron I'd worn for 30 Thanksgivings, the one with tiny embroidered turkeys that my late husband Clarence had given me back in 1992. And braced myself. In the kitchen, dear, I called out, trying to keep my voice warm and welcoming despite the knot forming in my stomach. At 70, I'd learned to trust my instincts, and right now, every instinct I had was screaming that Veronica's unannounced visit at dawn on a Tuesday was not going to be pleasant. She swept into my kitchen like a storm front, all sharp angles and purpose in her cream-colored Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her angular face look even more intimidating, and her lips were pressed into that thin line that meant she was about to deliver news she considered non-negotiable. Behind her, looking apologetic and uncomfortable in his charcoal business suit, was my son Benjamin. My youngest boy, the baby of my 3 children, now 42 years old and apparently unable to visit his own mother without his wife orchestrating the encounter. Good morning, Mom, Benjamin said softly, not quite meeting my eyes as he gave me a brief, one-armed hug that felt more obligatory than affectionate. I'd been up since 5 a.m., as I had been every day this week, preparing for Thursday's feast. My kitchen looked like a bakery had exploded in the best possible way. 3 different types of pie dough were resting in the refrigerator. My grandmother's handwritten recipe cards were spread across the counter, some of them so old the ink had faded to a pale brown. The massive heritage turkey I'd special ordered from Brennan's organic farm was brining in a cooler on the back porch, and the house smelled like cinnamon, nutmeg, and the promise of family gathering together. Or at least, that's what it had smelled like before Veronica arrived and somehow made even the air in my kitchen feel colder. Margaret, she began, and I noticed she never called me Mom like my other daughters-in-law did. Always Margaret, as if maintaining that formal distance was essential to whatever power dynamic she'd established in her mind. We need to have a serious conversation about Thursday. I was elbow-deep in the dough for my famous maple pecan pie, the same recipe that had won first place at the Maplewood Heights Harvest Festival for 3 consecutive years in the 1990s. Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind? Are you worried about dietary restrictions? I know you've been on that new cleanse. It's not about dietary restrictions. She pulled out one of my kitchen chairs, the one with the slightly wobbly leg that Clarence had always meant to fix, and sat down like she was conducting a board meeting. It's about the entire event. Benjamin and I have been discussing it extensively, and we've come to some important decisions about how Thanksgiving will be handled this year. The way she said, how Thanksgiving will be handled, made my hands still in the pie dough. Not celebrated. Not hosted. Handled. Like it was a business transaction or a project that required management oversight. Decisions? I asked carefully, looking past her to Benjamin, who had suddenly become fascinated with something outside my kitchen window. Veronica pulled out her phone, one of those new models that seemed to do everything except actually make the user more human, and began scrolling through what appeared to be detailed notes. The woman had actually made a presentation about my Thanksgiving dinner. First, we need to discuss the menu, she said, her voice taking on that lecturing tone she probably used with the junior marketing associates at her firm. The traditional turkey and stuffing approach is frankly quite dated. Benjamin's been promoted to senior vice president at Techstone Industries. I know what position my son holds, I interjected gently. She continued as if I hadn't spoken. And with that promotion comes certain expectations. We'll be hosting several of his colleagues and their families this year. The CEO, Roland Fitzpatrick, and his wife Constance. The Vice President of Operations, Marcus Chen, and his partner. The new Director of Strategic Development, Amanda Blackwell, who just relocated from Manhattan. These are influential people, Margaret. People who are accustomed to a certain caliber of dining experience. I felt my chest tighten. You invited Benjamin's co-workers to Thanksgiving? Without asking me? We're not asking permission, Margaret. We're informing you of the changes. Veronica's tone sharpened slightly. This is an important networking opportunity for Benjamin's career. You do want what's best for your son, don't you? The question hung in the air like a trap. Any answer other than enthusiastic agreement would make me sound selfish and unsupportive. Of course I want what's best for Benjamin, I said slowly. But Veronica, I've been hosting Thanksgiving in this house since 1982. We have traditions. Your children, my grandchildren, look forward to Grandma's turkey and stuffing. Emma still talks about the way I let her help make the cranberry sauce last year. Emma is 7 years old, Veronica said dismissively. She'll adapt to change much easier than you seem able to. Which brings me to my next point. She swiped to a new screen on her phone. I've secured reservations with Bellefontaine Catering. They're the premier culinary service in the tri-state area. Their autumn harvest menu includes herb-crusted rack of lamb with rosemary reduction, wild mushroom and truffle risotto, roasted Brussels sprouts with pancetta and balsamic glaze, butternut squash soup served in individual sourdough bread bowls, and their signature deconstructed sweet potato soufflé with torched marshmallow foam. I stared at her. Marshmallow foam? It's molecular gastronomy, Margaret. Very sophisticated. Very impressive. She showed me her phone screen, which displayed artfully arranged food that looked more like something from a modern art museum than a family dinner table. But what about the turkey? I heard the tremor in my own voice and hated it. What about the cornbread dressing with sage that Clarence's mother taught me to make? What about the green bean casserole that every single one of the grandchildren asks for? What about the pumpkin pie that I make from actual pumpkins, not cans? Veronica sighed, the kind of exaggerated sigh someone makes when they're dealing with a child who won't accept that bedtime is non-negotiable. That's exactly the issue we need to address, Margaret. You're 70 years old. Do you have any idea how much physical labor goes into preparing a traditional Thanksgiving dinner for? How many people were you planning to cook for this year? 18, I said quietly. Including little Mason, who'll be experiencing his first solid food Thanksgiving at 15 months old. 18 people, Veronica repeated, as if I'd just admitted to planning to climb Mount Everest in my bedroom slippers. 18 people means hours and hours of standing in a hot kitchen. It means lifting heavy roasting pans in and out of the oven. It means the physical demands of peeling potatoes, chopping vegetables, basting turkey, managing multiple dishes at different temperatures and timing requirements. She leaned forward, her expression shifting into what I'm sure she thought was concern but looked more like condescension. Margaret, at your age, that's simply not safe. Not safe, I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Mom, Benjamin finally spoke up, though his voice carried no real conviction. Veronica's worried about you. We both are. Last year, you looked exhausted after dinner. You were practically asleep in your chair by 8 p.m. I was tired because I cooked for 16 people, cleaned up mostly by myself while everyone else watched football, and had been up since 5 a.m. preparing everything, I said, trying very hard to keep my voice level. That's normal tiredness from hard work, not some sign of senile decay. Veronica's eyes flashed. No one said anything about senile decay. Don't put words in my mouth, Margaret. We're simply being realistic about the limitations that come with aging. There's no shame in acknowledging that you can't do everything you could do when you were younger. She stood up and began walking around my kitchen, running her finger along the countertops like she was conducting an inspection. Beyond the physical concerns, there's also the matter of, how to put this delicately, presentation standards. Presentation standards? I felt my hands clench in the pie dough. Margaret, when was the last time you updated your kitchenware? These mixing bowls look like they're from the 1980s. This oven is clearly decades old. Your refrigerator still has those magnetic alphabet letters the grandchildren played with years ago. She picked up my grandmother's cast-iron skillet with 2 fingers, like it might contaminate her. This cookware is antique. Quite literally. That skillet belonged to my grandmother, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. It's over 100 years old, and it's seasoned to perfection. I've cooked thousands of meals in that pan. Exactly my point. It's outdated. Just like these recipe cards with the handwriting that's barely legible. Just like this entire approach to holiday entertaining. She set the skillet down with a disdainful clank. Benjamin's colleagues are accustomed to modern culinary experiences. They eat at restaurants where the plates cost more than this entire kitchen setup. I cannot allow this dinner to be some quaint, homespun affair that makes us look provincial. And there it was. The truth beneath all the concern about my age and safety. This wasn't about protecting me from physical strain. This was about Veronica being embarrassed by me, by my traditional cooking, by my grandmother's recipes and my old-fashioned kitchen, and my refusal to pretend that Thanksgiving was about impressing strangers instead of feeding family. So what exactly are you proposing? I asked, though I already knew the answer would break my heart. Veronica sat back down and folded her hands on the table in a posture that probably looked reasonable and mature to her but felt deeply patronizing to me. We're proposing that you step back and let the younger generation take over. You've done your part, Margaret. You've hosted Thanksgiving for 40+ years. You've earned the right to relax and simply be a guest. A guest, I said flatly. In my own home. For a holiday I've been hosting since before you were born. You make it sound like we're being cruel, Veronica said, and I caught the first hint of real irritation in her voice. She didn't like being painted as the villain. We're trying to honor you by relieving you of this burden. Most women your age would be grateful for the opportunity to sit back and enjoy the day without all the stress and labor. I don't find it stressful, I said. I find it meaningful. This house has been the gathering place for our family for over 4 decades. My children, all 3 of them, grew up running through these rooms on Thanksgiving Day. My grandchildren have learned to cook at this counter. This isn't just about food, Veronica. This is about legacy and memory and tradition. Traditions change, Margaret. Her voice hardened. Perhaps it's time you accepted that you can't do everything you used to do. There's no shame in aging gracefully and letting go of responsibilities that have become too much for you. The phrase, aging gracefully, landed like a physical blow. As if fighting for my place in my own family was somehow undignified. As if 4 decades of perfect Thanksgiving dinners counted for nothing because I'd had the audacity to turn 70 and still want to matter. Benjamin shifted uncomfortably. Mom, nobody's saying you don't matter. We're just trying to make things easier for everyone. Easier for everyone, or more impressive for your boss? I asked, looking directly at my son. He had the decency to look guilty for about 3 seconds before Veronica cut in. That's unfair, Margaret. Benjamin has worked incredibly hard for this promotion. Is it really so terrible that we want to make a good impression on the people who control his career trajectory? Would you prefer he stay stagnant professionally because you're too stubborn to adapt? I'm not being stubborn. I'm trying to preserve something that matters to this family. What matters to this family, Veronica interrupted, her voice rising slightly, is Benjamin's success. What matters is ensuring our children have the financial security and opportunities that come from their father advancing in his career. What matters is understanding that sometimes the needs of the present are more important than clinging to the past. I looked at Benjamin again, waiting for him to say something, anything, to remind his wife that I was his mother, that this was my home, that 43 years of family tradition couldn't just be discarded like outdated kitchenware. But my son stood there silent, trapped between the woman who'd raised him and the woman he'd married, and I could see clearly that he'd already made his choice. Veronica pressed her advantage, sensing my resolve weakening. Look, we're not trying to exclude you. You can absolutely still participate. You could set the table, we'll provide the linens and centerpieces, of course. You could arrange some flowers, maybe greet guests at the door. Simple tasks that won't overtax you physically but will help you feel included in the day. Simple tasks, I repeated, the words like ashes in my mouth. Yes. Age-appropriate contributions. She pulled up another screen on her phone. I've actually created a detailed timeline for the day. The caterers will arrive at 2 p.m. to begin setup. Guests will arrive at 5 p.m. for cocktail hour. We'll have a mixologist creating signature autumn-themed drinks. Dinner will be served at 6:30 p.m. sharp. The entire event should conclude by 9 p.m., which I know is past your usual bedtime. My usual bedtime? I felt something hot and sharp rising in my chest. Veronica, I'm 70, not 7. Which is exactly why we're trying to be considerate of your limitations. She stood up again, smoothing her perfect suit. The reality is, Margaret, that hosting a dinner party of this caliber requires energy and sophistication that frankly isn't in your wheelhouse anymore. I'm sure when you were younger, your traditional approach was perfectly adequate for family gatherings. But this is different. This is business. This is Benjamin's future. I set down my rolling pin very carefully, afraid that if I held onto it any longer, I might do something I'd regret. And if I say no? If I tell you that I want to continue hosting Thanksgiving the way I always have, in my own home, with my own food and my own family traditions? Veronica's expression went cold, all pretense of concern evaporating. Then Benjamin and I will host Thanksgiving at our house in Riverside Estates. We'll hire the caterers to set up there. We'll invite his colleagues to our home, where we can ensure the proper atmosphere and presentation. And obviously, the rest of the family will come to where the actual dinner is being held. You'd steal Thanksgiving from me, I whispered. We're not stealing anything. We're offering you a choice. You can accept our help and allow Thanksgiving to evolve into something more appropriate for our current circumstances, or you can insist on doing things your outdated way, and we'll simply move the celebration elsewhere. She picked up her designer handbag. Your choice, Margaret. But decide quickly. I need to confirm final numbers with the caterer by this afternoon. I looked at Benjamin, my baby boy who I'd rocked to sleep when he had nightmares, who I'd taught to ride a bike in this very driveway, who I'd sat up with all night when he was sick with the flu during his senior year of high school. Benjamin? You agree with this? He couldn't look at me. Mom, it's just one Thanksgiving. And Veronica's right, you do look tired after these big dinners. Maybe it would be nice for you to just relax and enjoy the day for once. For once, I repeated. As if I haven't enjoyed every single Thanksgiving I've hosted for the past 43 years. You know what I mean, he mumbled. But I did know what he meant. And what Veronica meant. And what this whole conversation was really about. I wasn't modern enough. My traditions weren't impressive enough. My kitchen wasn't sophisticated enough. And most importantly, I wasn't young enough to matter anymore. I need to think about this, I said finally. Veronica checked her phone. You have until 2 p.m. today. After that, I'm moving forward with hosting at our place. She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Oh, and Margaret? If we do end up hosting at Riverside Estates, please understand that you'll be a guest just like everyone else. That means following our schedule, our dress code, I'm thinking formal attire would be most appropriate, and our social protocols. No showing up early to help in the kitchen. No bringing your own dishes because you don't trust anyone else's cooking. No monopolizing the grandchildren with stories about Thanksgiving's past. You'll need to let go and let us handle things our way. She swept out of my kitchen with Benjamin trailing behind her like a dutiful shadow. At the door, my son turned back one more time. I'm sorry, Mom, he said softly. But this is important to my career. Try to understand. Then they were gone, and I was left standing in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd fed my family for over 40 years, where I'd taught my children to cook, where I'd comforted heartbreaks and celebrated victories and created memories that I thought would outlast me, surrounded by pie dough and recipe cards and the ghost of every Thanksgiving past. I walked slowly to my dining room, my legs feeling suddenly heavy and old in a way they hadn't just an hour ago. I pulled out the photo albums I kept in the antique sideboard that had belonged to Clarence's grandmother. The one labeled, Thanksgiving Memories 1982 to 2024, was worn at the edges from being opened so many times over the years. I sat down at my dining table, the same table that had held 43 Thanksgiving feasts, and opened to the first page. There was Clarence, young and handsome in 1982, carving our very first turkey in our very first home. My daughter Diane, just 3 years old, sitting in her high chair with mashed potatoes smeared across her chubby cheeks. My oldest son Marcus, 5 years old in that photo, trying to sneak a roll before dinner was officially served. I turned the pages slowly, watching my children grow through the years. Benjamin's first Thanksgiving, tiny and red-faced in my arms while Clarence beamed with pride at having a second son. The year Diane brought home her first boyfriend and everyone spent the whole dinner making the poor boy uncomfortable with questions about his intentions. The Thanksgiving right after Marcus deployed to Afghanistan, when we kept his place setting ready even though he couldn't be there, and we all pretended we weren't terrified for him. The year Clarence was diagnosed with lung cancer, and we all knew it might be his last Thanksgiving, so we laughed louder and hugged longer and I took 100 photos trying to freeze that day in time forever. His last Thanksgiving, 2 years ago, when he was so weak he could barely sit at the table, but he insisted on being there, on saying grace one more time, on telling his terrible knock-knock joke that he'd told every Thanksgiving for 40 years and that made everyone groan and laugh in equal measure. Page after page of memories. Babies being welcomed to their first solid food Thanksgiving. Children growing into teenagers. Teenagers becoming adults. Adults bringing home spouses and partners. Spouses and partners bringing grandchildren. The family tree expanding and blooming around my table, year after year, generation after generation. And in every single photo, at the center of it all, was the food. My food. The turkey that I'd learned to prepare from Clarence's mother, who'd learned it from her mother. The cornbread dressing made from my grandmother's recipe. The cranberry sauce that my great-aunt had taught me to make with fresh oranges. The pumpkin pie with the secret ingredient that made it just different enough from everyone else's that people remembered it. These weren't just recipes. This was ancestry. This was heritage being passed down through generations, one Thanksgiving at a time. And Veronica wanted to replace all of it with marshmallow foam and molecular gastronomy for people who wouldn't know or care about any of these memories. I closed the album and walked to the window that looked out over my backyard. The maple trees that Clarence and I had planted when we first bought this house in 1980 were nearly bare now, their leaves carpeting the ground in shades of amber and rust. 44 years we'd lived in this house. 44 years of memories soaked into every wall, every floorboard, every crack in the driveway. And now my own son was ready to discard all of that because his wife was embarrassed by tradition and his boss needed to be impressed. I thought about Clarence, about what he would say if he were here. He'd always been the steady one, the voice of reason when emotions ran hot. But I knew, deep in my bones, that he would be as heartbroken as I was. He'd loved our Thanksgiving traditions as much as I did. Every year, he'd spend hours setting up extra tables and chairs, making sure everyone had a comfortable place to sit. He'd stand at the head of the table before we ate and give thanks not just for the food, but for the hands that prepared it, for the family that gathered to share it, for the traditions that connected us to those who came before and those who would come after. What would he think of his son now, choosing corporate networking over family tradition? Choosing his wife's ambitions over his mother's dignity? I looked back at my kitchen, at the abandoned pie dough, at the recipe cards, at my grandmother's cast-iron skillet that Veronica had handled with such disdain. At the vintage apron with the embroidered turkeys that Clarence had given me all those years ago. And I made my decision. If Veronica thought I was too old, too outdated, too much of an embarrassment to host Thanksgiving, then I would show her exactly what it meant when the woman who'd held this family together for 4 decades decided she was done being taken for granted. I picked up my phone and started making calls. The first was to my daughter Diane in Portland. Then my oldest son Marcus in Denver. Then to my other daughters-in-law, my grandchildren who were old enough to have their own phones, even my sister Ruth in Scottsdale. And with each call, my message was the same. I'm calling to let you know that Thanksgiving is canceled this year. Not rescheduled. Not relocated. Canceled. I'll explain everything when you get here. By the time I finished making my calls, it was 1:45 p.m. 15 minutes before Veronica's arbitrary deadline. I sent one text message to Benjamin. Tell Veronica she can have her sophisticated dinner party at Riverside Estates. I won't be attending. And neither will anyone else. Thanksgiving at the Whitmore house is officially over. Then I turned off my phone, put away my pie dough, and sat down at my empty dining table to wait for the storm I knew was coming. But for the first time in weeks, maybe for the first time since Clarence died, I felt something other than grief and uselessness. I felt powerful. The silence in my house after I sent that text message was deafening. I sat at my dining room table, the same table where 43 Thanksgiving feasts had been served, and waited. My phone was turned off, sitting face down on the table like a small grenade with the pin already pulled. I knew what would happen once Benjamin read my message. I knew the explosion that was coming. What I didn't expect was how quickly it would arrive. Exactly 23 minutes after I sent the text, I heard a car screech into my driveway with enough force that I thought for a moment someone had crashed into my mailbox. Through the front window, I watched Veronica leap out of her silver Mercedes like the vehicle was on fire, her face twisted with rage that she wasn't even attempting to hide. Benjamin scrambled out of the passenger side, his phone pressed to his ear, gesticulating wildly as he spoke to someone. Even from inside the house, I could see the panic in his movements. They didn't knock. Veronica still had the spare key I'd given her, and she used it now, throwing open my front door with such force that it bounced off the wall with a loud crack. "Margaret," she shrieked, her carefully cultivated composure completely shattered. "What the hell have you done?" I remained seated at my dining table, my hands folded calmly in my lap, even though my heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "I did exactly what you suggested, Veronica." I stepped back. I let go. I accepted that I'm too old and outdated to host Thanksgiving. She stormed into my dining room, Benjamin trailing behind her looking like he might actually be sick. "Don't play games with me. You canceled Thanksgiving? You contacted the entire family and told them not to come? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've saved myself the embarrassment of being treated like obsolete furniture in my own home," I said quietly. "You made it very clear this morning that my traditions, my cooking, and my kitchen weren't good enough for your sophisticated dinner party. So I removed the problem." "The problem?" Veronica's voice went up another octave. "You didn't remove the problem, you created one. Benjamin's boss was supposed to be here on Thursday. The VP of Operations. The new director. These are people who can make or break his career, and now what are we supposed to tell them? That his crazy mother threw a tantrum and canceled Thanksgiving?" "I didn't throw a tantrum," I said, and I was proud of how steady my voice remained. "I made a rational decision based on the information you provided. You said I was too old to cook. You said my kitchen was outdated. You said my traditions were provincial and embarrassing. I agreed with you. So I stepped aside completely." Benjamin finally found his voice. "Mom, this is insane. You can't just cancel Thanksgiving." "Why not?" I looked directly at my son. "You were perfectly willing to cancel it for me this morning. You and Veronica were going to take over my holiday, in my house, without my permission, and replace everything I've built for 43 years with catered food and corporate networking. But when I cancel it myself, suddenly I'm the unreasonable one?" "That's not, we weren't," Benjamin stammered, looking helplessly at his wife. Veronica's eyes were blazing with fury. "We were trying to help you, you ungrateful woman. We were trying to spare you the physical strain and include you in a more age-appropriate way. And this is how you repay us? By sabotaging Benjamin's career?" I'm not sabotaging anything, I said. You're welcome to host your dinner party at Riverside Estates, exactly as you threatened to do this morning. Invite all of Benjamin's colleagues. Hire your fancy caterers. Serve your marshmallow foam and your deconstructed whatever. I won't be in your way. But the family won't be there either. Veronica slammed her hand down on my table, making the photo album jump. You told everyone not to come. You turned them against us. I didn't turn anyone against you. I simply informed them that Thanksgiving at this house was cancelled. What they choose to do with that information is up to them. Benjamin's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face went even paler. It's Diane, he said weakly. Don't answer it, Veronica snapped. But Benjamin was already swiping to accept the call. Hey, Dee. Even from where I sat, I could hear my daughter's voice coming through the phone, sharp and angry. Benjamin held the phone slightly away from his ear, wincing at whatever Diane was saying. After a moment, he lowered the phone and looked at Veronica with something like despair. She wants to know what we did to Mom. She says she's getting on a plane tonight and she'll be here tomorrow to sort this out. She sounds really angry. Of course she's angry, Veronica said through gritted teeth. Because your mother is manipulating everyone with her wounded pride routine. It's not a routine, I said softly. And I'm not manipulating anyone. I simply told them the truth, that Thanksgiving here is cancelled because you made it clear my contributions weren't wanted or needed. Benjamin's phone rang again. Then again. Within 5 minutes, it seemed like every member of our family was trying to reach him. His face grew more and more panicked with each call he declined. Veronica paced my dining room like a caged animal, her expensive heels clicking furiously against my hardwood floors. This is unbelievable. Do you understand what you've cost us? Roland Fitzpatrick was impressed that Benjamin came from such a close family. That was one of the things that set him apart from the other candidates for the VP position. Family values. Traditional American values. And now what? Now he's the guy whose mother went crazy and canceled Thanksgiving? Maybe you should have thought about that before you told me I was too old to matter, I said. Veronica whirled on me. I never said you didn't matter. You said I was too old to cook. Too outdated to host. Too much of an embarrassment to be involved in anything more than setting the table and arranging flowers. You called my kitchen antiquated. My recipes provincial. My traditions dated. You made it abundantly clear that I was an obstacle to Benjamin's success. I stood up slowly, meeting her furious gaze. So I removed the obstacle. You should be thanking me. This is emotional blackmail, Veronica hissed. You're holding Thanksgiving hostage to punish us for trying to help you. I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm simply choosing not to participate in my own humiliation. There's a difference. Benjamin's phone buzzed with a text. He looked at it and groaned. Mom, Marcus is on his way. He says he's driving straight through from Denver. He'll be here by tomorrow afternoon. Good, I said. I'd like to see my oldest son. It's been 6 months. He's not coming for a pleasant visit. Veronica exploded. He's coming because you've stirred up drama. You've made yourself the victim and turned the entire family against us. I haven't made myself anything. You made me irrelevant. I simply accepted it. Another car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see my neighbor Helen getting out with what looked like a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. She'd clearly heard some version of what was happening. News traveled fast in Maplewood Heights, and was bringing comfort food, as she'd done after Clarence died. Veronica saw her too and made a sound of frustration. Perfect. Now the neighbors are getting involved. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? I imagine it makes you look exactly like what you are, I said quietly. A woman who tried to push her elderly mother-in-law aside and is now dealing with the consequences. Benjamin sank into one of my dining chairs, his head in his hands. Mom, please. Can we just talk about this rationally? Maybe we overreacted this morning. Maybe we can find a compromise. A compromise, I repeated. Like the compromise where I set the table and arrange flowers while caterers cook in my kitchen and strangers eat at my table? We could include some of your traditional dishes, Benjamin said desperately. Maybe the caterers could prepare some of your recipes alongside their menu. Would that work? Veronica's head snapped toward her husband. Benjamin, we are not negotiating with her. She's behaving like a child, and if we give in now, she'll pull this manipulative nonsense every time she doesn't get her way. I'm behaving like a child? I felt my own anger rising now, hot and sharp. I'm the one behaving like a child? Veronica, you came into my home this morning and told me I was too old, too incompetent, too embarrassing to do the thing I've been doing perfectly for longer than you've been alive. You threatened to steal Thanksgiving from me if I didn't comply with your demands. You made it clear that your husband's career was more important than his mother's dignity. And now you're angry because I had the audacity to take you seriously? We were thinking of your health. You were thinking of yourselves. The words came out louder than I'd intended, echoing in the dining room. You were thinking about impressing Benjamin's boss. About advancing his career. About looking sophisticated and modern and successful. I was never a consideration in any of your planning except as an obstacle to be managed. The doorbell rang. None of us moved for a moment, then I walked to the door and opened it to find Helen standing there with her casserole and a concerned expression. Margaret, honey, I heard there was some trouble. I brought you my tuna noodle casserole. I know it's not much, but... She trailed off as she caught sight of Veronica and Benjamin in the dining room. Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had company. They were just leaving, I said, taking the casserole with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Helen. This is very kind. Veronica appeared at my shoulder. We are not leaving. This conversation is far from over. Helen looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. I'll just go. But Margaret, if you need anything, I'm right next door. She gave Veronica a look that could have frozen water, then headed back to her house. As soon as I closed the door, Veronica turned on me again. Now you're accepting casseroles from the neighbors? You're really playing this up, aren't you? Poor Margaret, abandoned by her cruel family. I'm accepting kindness from a friend, I said. Something you might not understand. Benjamin's phone rang yet again. This time when he answered, I could hear my sister Ruth's voice, loud and indignant even through the tiny speaker. Benjamin Michael Whitmore, what in God's name have you done to your mother? Aunt Ruth, I can explain. You'd better explain, young man. I just got off the phone with Margaret, and she tells me you and that wife of yours told her she was too old to cook Thanksgiving dinner. In her own house. The house where your father died, where you grew up, where this family has gathered for over 40 years. What were you thinking? It's complicated, Aunt Ruth. It's not complicated at all. You chose your career over your mother. You chose impressing strangers over respecting the woman who raised you. Your father would be ashamed. I saw Benjamin flinch as if he'd been physically struck. Veronica tried to grab the phone from him, but he pulled away. Aunt Ruth, please, we're trying to work this out. I'm flying in tomorrow morning. I'll be at Margaret's house by noon. And you'd better have a damn good explanation ready because right now, I'm of a mind to tell you exactly what I think of a man who treats his widowed mother like yesterday's garbage. The call ended. Benjamin sat there holding his phone, looking like he might actually cry. Great, Veronica said bitterly. Now even the extended family is involved. Your Aunt Ruth, who we see maybe once every 5 years, is suddenly the arbiter of family values. Aunt Ruth has always been protective of family, I said. She was there when I had Benjamin. She helped me through Clarence's diagnosis and death. She's been more present than you want to acknowledge. This is spiraling out of control, Benjamin said, his voice cracking. Mom, please. Tell everyone it was a misunderstanding. Tell them Thanksgiving is back on. We'll do it your way, traditional food, your recipes, everything. So now my way is acceptable? I asked. Now that the family is angry and your aunt is flying in? Now that the neighbors are bringing casseroles? Suddenly my outdated, provincial traditions are good enough? Mom. No, Benjamin. I shook my head. You don't get to do this. You don't get to treat me like I'm worthless until there are consequences, and then pretend you never meant it. You made your choice this morning. You chose Veronica's ambitions over your mother. You chose to let her talk about me like I was a burden to be managed. You stood there silent while she inspected my kitchen like it was a health code violation. You said nothing when she called my grandmother's skillet outdated and my recipes primitive. I was trying to keep the peace. You were being a coward, I said, and Benjamin looked like I'd slapped him. Your father never would have let anyone talk to me the way Veronica did this morning. He would have stood up for me, for our traditions, for this family. But you? You just stood there and let it happen because you were afraid of upsetting your wife or jeopardizing your career. Tears were actually running down Benjamin's face now. Dad's not here anymore, Mom. I'm trying to do what's best for my own family. I am your family. The words burst out of me with more pain than I'd meant to show. I'm your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. I sat up with you when you were sick. I taught you to tie your shoes and ride a bike and be a decent human being. Or at least I thought I did. But the man standing in my dining room right now, the man who let his wife humiliate me in my own home, the man who thought his career was more important than his mother's dignity, I don't recognize him at all. The silence that followed was crushing. Benjamin was openly crying now, and even Veronica looked shaken, though she tried to hide it behind a mask of anger. You're being melodramatic, Veronica said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Am I? Then let me ask you something, Veronica. When you're 70 years old, and your children tell you that you're too old to be useful, that your contributions don't matter anymore, that you're an embarrassment that needs to be managed and hidden away, how will you feel? Will it be melodramatic then? Or will you finally understand what you did to me today? She didn't answer. For the first time since she'd stormed into my house, Veronica had nothing to say. Benjamin wiped his face with the back of his hand. What do you want us to do, Mom? How do we fix this? I don't know that you can, I said honestly. You've shown me who you are. Both of you. You've shown me exactly how much I matter to you when there's something more important at stake. That's not something that gets fixed with an apology or a compromise. So that's it? Benjamin's voice was hollow. You're just going to cut us out of your life? Punish us forever? I'm not cutting you out or punishing you. I'm protecting myself. I'm choosing not to put myself in a position where I can be treated like this again. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave now. Take your caterers and your corporate dinner party and your sophisticated menu to Riverside Estates. Host your networking event. Impress Benjamin's boss. Do whatever you need to do. Just do it without me. And the rest of the family? Veronica asked. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That Thanksgiving at this house is cancelled because you made it clear I wasn't wanted or needed. What they do with that information is up to them. Benjamin walked slowly toward the door, looking back at me with devastated eyes. I love you, Mom. I hope you know that. I know you think you do, I said softly. But love isn't just words, Benjamin. It's actions. It's standing up for the people you love when they're being disrespected. It's choosing them even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. And by that measure, I'm not sure you showed me much love today. He left without another word, Veronica following behind him with her jaw clenched tight. I watched their Mercedes pull out of my driveway, then closed the door and leaned against it, feeling every one of my 70 years in my aching bones. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I walked through the rooms slowly, seeing them differently now. The living room where we'd open Christmas presents every year. The kitchen where I'd taught all 3 of my children to cook. The dining room where 43 Thanksgivings had been celebrated. 43 years of memories, and it had taken one morning for my son to suggest they weren't worth preserving. I went back to my kitchen and looked at the abandoned pie dough, now warm and useless. The turkey was still brining on the back porch. The recipe cards were still spread across the counter. All the preparations for a Thanksgiving that would never happen. I should have felt victorious. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be pushed aside. I'd made them face consequences for their disrespect. Instead, I just felt old and tired and heartbroken. My phone, still turned off on the dining room table, represented a flood of messages I wasn't ready to face. I knew what they would say. Diane would be furious on my behalf. Marcus would be protective and angry. Ruth would be ready to go to war. My other grandchildren would be confused and upset. Everyone would want explanations, want to take sides, want to fix this. But I wasn't sure it could be fixed. I picked up Helen's tuna noodle casserole and put it in the refrigerator next to the turkey brine. Then I walked upstairs to my bedroom, changed into my nightgown even though it was barely 5 p.m., and climbed into bed. I stared at the ceiling, at the water stain in the corner that Clarence had always meant to fix but never got around to. Everything in this house was a memory. Everything was Clarence and the children and the life we'd built together. And now that life felt like it was crumbling around me. The doorbell rang again. I ignored it. It rang twice more, then I heard Helen's voice through the door. "Margaret, honey, it's me. I'm leaving some more food on the porch. And I'm here if you need to talk. Anytime, day or night." I heard her footsteps retreating, and I rolled over to face Clarence's side of the bed. The side that had been empty for 2 years now. The side that still smelled faintly of his cologne when I buried my face in his pillow. "I don't know what to do," I whispered to the empty space beside me. "I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know how to fix this family without fixing myself into a corner again." The house settled around me with its familiar creaks and sighs. Somewhere outside, a car drove by. The heating system kicked on with a gentle whoosh. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a life that felt suddenly very far from normal. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes again, it was dark outside and my phone was buzzing from downstairs. Persistent. Urgent. I dragged myself out of bed and down the stairs, turning on the phone with trembling fingers. 47 missed calls. 63 text messages. 12 voicemails. I scrolled through them with growing anxiety. Diane was indeed on a plane and would be here tomorrow morning. Marcus had been trying to reach Benjamin but kept getting voicemail. Ruth was furious and already booking her flight. My daughter-in-law Patricia, Marcus's wife, wanted to know what she could do to help. My granddaughter Emma, Benjamin's 7-year-old, had somehow gotten hold of Veronica's phone and left a tearful voicemail asking why Grandma didn't want to see her on Thanksgiving anymore. That last one broke my heart into even smaller pieces. But there were other messages too. Messages I hadn't expected. My neighbor from 3 houses down, offering to host Thanksgiving if I needed a place. My book club friends, saying they'd love to have me join them for their Friendsgiving. The pastor from the church I attended sporadically, inviting me to the community dinner they held every year for people who had nowhere else to go. Acts of kindness from people who barely knew me, while my own son had treated me like yesterday's trash. I was reading through a particularly kind message from my friend Lorraine when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Mrs. Whitmore? This is Constance Fitzpatrick. We haven't met, but I'm married to Roland, who works with your son Benjamin." My heart sank. This was it. The call from the boss's wife, calling to express her disappointment that the Thanksgiving dinner had been cancelled. I braced myself for more judgment, more evidence that I'd ruined Benjamin's career with my hurt feelings. "Mrs. Fitzpatrick," I said carefully. "I'm sure Benjamin has explained." "He tried to," she interrupted. But his wife did most of the talking, and I have to tell you, Mrs. Whitmore, I didn't much care for what I heard. I blinked. "I'm sorry. Please call me Constance. And I'm the one who should apologize." You see, Veronica called me about an hour ago. She wanted to explain why the Thanksgiving dinner at your home had been cancelled and to reassure us that they'd be hosting an alternative event at their house instead. But the way she explained it, the things she said about you, well, it didn't sit right with me at all. I sat down slowly. What did she say? She said you were being unreasonable and difficult. That you'd thrown a tantrum when they tried to help you by taking over the dinner preparations. She made it sound like you were a stubborn old woman who couldn't accept that you weren't capable of hosting anymore. Constance paused. But Mrs. Whitmore, I'm 73 years old. And the way Veronica talked about you, about aging, about being past your prime, it made my blood boil. I felt tears stinging my eyes. Thank you for saying that. My dear, I didn't just say it to you. I said it to her. I told her that I found her attitude toward her mother-in-law deeply disrespectful and that Roland and I would not be attending any dinner party hosted by someone who treats elderly family members with such contempt. Constance's voice was firm and warm. I also told her that if she thinks success in business means stepping on the people who came before you, she has a very warped understanding of what makes a person truly accomplished. I couldn't speak. Tears were running down my face now, and I couldn't have formed words if I'd tried. Mrs. Whitmore? Are you there? I'm here, I managed. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know that not everyone thinks you're in the wrong here. In fact, I'd wager that most people with any sense would see exactly what your daughter-in-law was trying to do. She paused. I raised 4 children, Mrs. Whitmore. I know what it's like to pour your life into your family only to have them take you for granted. Don't let anyone make you feel like standing up for yourself is somehow wrong. Thank you, I whispered. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. Oh, I think I have some idea. Now, I understand that Thanksgiving at your home is cancelled, and that's perfectly understandable given the circumstances. But Roland and I host a small dinner for colleagues who don't have family in the area. If you find yourself alone on Thursday and would like some company, we'd be honored to have you join us. No pressure, no obligations. Just an invitation from one grandmother to another. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room for a long time, clutching my phone and crying. But these weren't tears of grief or anger anymore. They were something more complicated. Relief, maybe. Validation. The unexpected kindness of a stranger who understood what I was going through because she lived long enough to face similar challenges. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Diane. Landed in Chicago. Getting a rental car. We'll be at your house by 10 a.m. tomorrow. I love you, Mom. Whatever happened, we're going to fix it together. Then Marcus, crossed into Nebraska. Should be there by tomorrow afternoon. Dad would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. I know I am. And finally, Ruth, flight lands at 11:30 a.m. I'm bringing reinforcements. That daughter-in-law of yours is about to learn what happens when you mess with a Whitmore woman. I smiled through my tears. My family was coming. Not all of them, Benjamin and Veronica had made their choice. But the ones who mattered, the ones who understood what family really meant, they were coming. And for the first time since that awful confrontation this morning, I felt something that wasn't grief or anger or hurt. I felt hope. I woke Wednesday morning to the sound of a car door slamming in my driveway. For a disoriented moment, I thought maybe I'd dreamed everything, the confrontation with Veronica, the cancelled Thanksgiving, all of it. But then I saw the time, 9:47 a.m. I'd slept later than I had in decades, my body finally succumbing to the exhaustion of yesterday's emotional warfare. Another car door slammed, followed by footsteps running up my front walk. Then I heard her voice. Mom. Mom, open up. I know you're in there. Diane. I dragged myself out of bed, still in yesterday's nightgown, my hair a disaster, my face puffy from crying. I barely made it to the stairs before Diane used her own key to let herself in. She stood in my entryway like an avenging angel, her red hair wild from travel, her eyes fierce with protective fury. Mom, she breathed, and then she was hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. Oh, Mom. What did they do to you? I burst into tears again. Apparently, I had an unlimited supply, and let my daughter hold me while I sobbed into her shoulder. She was my middle child, my only girl, and she'd always been the one who felt everything most intensely. When she loved with her whole heart. And when someone hurt the people she loved, her rage was equally absolute. Come on, she said gently, guiding me to the couch. Sit down. Have you eaten anything? When did you last have water? Mom, you look like you haven't slept in days. Just one day, I managed. One very long day. Diane disappeared into my kitchen and I heard her moving around, opening cabinets, running water. She returned with a glass of orange juice and what looked like toast with butter. Eat, she commanded. Then tell me everything. And I mean everything, Mom. Don't leave out a single detail. So I told her. I started with Veronica's arrival yesterday morning, the inspection of my kitchen, the condescending lecture about being too old to cook. I told her about the caterers and the molecular gastronomy and the simple tasks I'd be allowed to perform. I told her about Benjamin's silence, his refusal to defend me, his choice to support his wife over his mother. With each detail, Diane's expression grew darker. By the time I got to the part where Veronica called my grandmother's skillet outdated, and my traditions provincial, Diane was on her feet, pacing my living room like a caged tiger. That entitled, social climbing, soul-sucking excuse for a human being, Diane said, her voice shaking with rage. And Benjamin just stood there? He just let her talk to you like that? He tried to play peacemaker, I said weakly. He said they were worried about my health. Bullshit. Diane exploded. Sorry, Mom, but that's complete bullshit. This wasn't about your health. This was about Veronica being embarrassed by anything that doesn't fit her perfect Instagram-worthy life. She's always been like this, always looking down on anyone who doesn't meet her impossible standards. You've never liked her, I said. No, I haven't. And this is exactly why. Diane stopped pacing and knelt in front of me, taking my hands. Mom, you did the right thing. Canceling Thanksgiving was the right call. You're not a servant. You're not set decoration for her networking event. You're the woman who built this family from nothing after Dad died, who raised 3 kids on a teacher's salary, who's hosted 43 Thanksgivings with love and grace and more patience than any of us deserved. But what about Benjamin's career? What about his boss? What about them? Diane interrupted. Mom, if Benjamin's career depends on humiliating his widowed mother, then he doesn't deserve that career. And from what you told me about Mrs. Fitzpatrick's call, it sounds like his boss's wife agrees with me. A knock at the door interrupted us. Diane went to answer it and came back with Helen, my neighbor, carrying another casserole and looking worried. Margaret, I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to check on you. The Johnsons 2 doors down saw all the commotion yesterday, and word's gotten around the neighborhood that something happened. Word travels fast in Maplewood Heights, I said with a weak smile. It's a small community. People care about you, Margaret. Helen set down the casserole, this one appeared to be chicken and rice, and sat beside me. And I have to tell you, most of your neighbors are firmly on your side. Especially after Beverly saw that daughter-in-law of yours screaming at you in your own driveway. Beverly Patterson? I asked. Beverly lived across the street and was known for her keen observation of neighborhood activities, which some people less charitably called being nosy. The same. She was walking her dog and saw the whole thing. She said that Veronica woman was so angry she was practically foaming at the mouth. Helen patted my hand. Beverly's organizing a support rotation. We're going to make sure you have meals and company for the next week, whether you want it or not. I felt tears welling up again. That's so kind, but you don't have to. We want to, Helen said firmly. You've been a good neighbor and a good friend. That's what community means. After Helen left, Diane made me take a shower while she started cleaning up the kitchen. By the time I came back downstairs, dressed in actual clothes and feeling slightly more human, she disposed of the ruined pie dough, reorganized my recipe cards, and was making phone calls. Yes, that's right, she was saying into her phone. Wednesday at 3 p.m. I'll text you the address. Perfect. See you then. Who was that? I asked. Diane smiled, and there was something almost predatory in it. That was my lawyer friend, Michelle. She specializes in elder law and family disputes. I thought it might be good to know what your options are, legally speaking, if Veronica tries to pull anything else. Diane, I don't want to sue my daughter-in-law. Not sue. Just understand your rights. Knowledge is power, Mom. She pulled out her laptop. Now, I've been doing some research on financial elder abuse, and... Financial elder abuse? What are you talking about? Diane looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Mom, has Veronica ever asked you for money? Or access to your accounts? Anything like that? I thought back over the past few years. Well, when Benjamin and Veronica bought their house in Riverside Estates, I helped with the down payment. It was my choice, I wanted to help them. How much? $50,000. From the life insurance after your father died. Diane's jaw tightened. And did they pay you back? They said they would, when Benjamin's promotion came through. But Diane, that was a gift. I didn't expect. It wasn't a gift if they promised to pay you back. That makes it a loan. She typed something into her laptop. What about recently? Any other financial help? I hesitated. Last year, Veronica said they were having cash flow problems with some investments. She asked if I could lend them $20,000. She said it was just temporary, just until some stocks matured. I gave it to her because I didn't want Benjamin to be stressed. Did you get that back? Not yet, but... Mom. Diane closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. That's $70,000. Did you get anything in writing? Any signed agreements? Anything at all? It's family, I said weakly. You don't ask for signed agreements from family. Yes, you do. Especially when that family member treats you like garbage. Diane pulled out her phone again. I'm calling Marcus. He needs to know about this. Before I could protest, she had him on speakerphone. I could hear road noise in the background. He was still driving. Dee? What's up? I'm about 3 hours out. Marcus, did you know that Mom gave Benjamin and Veronica $70,000 over the past few years? There was a long pause. 70,000? Mom, is this true? It was to help with the house and some investments. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Did you get any of it back? They said they'd pay me when they could. When they could. Marcus's voice was tight with controlled anger. While they're living in a $500,000 house and hosting catered dinner parties and taking vacations to Napa Valley. Mom, they've been taking advantage of you. They're family, I repeated, but the words sounded hollow even to me. Family doesn't steal from each other, Marcus said flatly. Listen, I'm going to make some calls. I have a buddy who's a forensic accountant. If Veronica and Benjamin have been financially exploiting you, we need to document it. Marcus, please, I don't want this to turn into a legal battle. It's already a battle, Mom. They fired the first shot when they tried to push you out of your own holiday. Now we're just making sure you have ammunition to defend yourself. After the call ended, I sat in my living room feeling overwhelmed. This was spiraling so far beyond a Thanksgiving dinner dispute. My children were talking about lawyers and financial exploitation and legal battles. This was my family we were discussing, not some stranger. I know what you're thinking, Diane said softly. You're thinking this has gone too far. You're thinking maybe you should just apologize and make peace and go back to how things were. She wasn't wrong. But Mom, listen to me. How things were wasn't good. You were being taken for granted financially and emotionally. Benjamin and Veronica have been treating you like a bank account with legs, and when you weren't useful for their social climbing, they tried to push you aside. That's not love. That's not family. That's exploitation. But what about the grandchildren? I asked. Emma and little Mason? If I fight with Veronica, she might not let me see them. If she does that, we document it as another example of her controlling behavior. Mom, I know this is scary. I know it feels wrong to fight with your own son. But sometimes fighting is necessary. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to make people understand they can't treat you like this. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Ruth, my sister, arriving with enough luggage for a month-long stay despite only planning to be here for a few days. She swept into the house like a force of nature, all silver hair and righteous indignation. Where is that miserable daughter-in-law? Ruth demanded. Where is she so I can tell her exactly what I think of a woman who disrespects her elders? Ruth, please, I started. Don't you, Ruth, please, me, Margaret and Whitmore. That girl has been walking all over you for years, and you've let her because you're too sweet for your own good. Well, I'm not sweet. I'm mean as a snake when someone hurts my baby sister, and I'm about to show that Veronica woman exactly how mean I can be. Despite everything, I smiled. Ruth had always been my protector, even when we were children. She was 5 years older than me and had spent our entire childhood defending me from bullies and standing up for me when I was too timid to stand up for myself. Apparently, 70 years later, nothing had changed. Ruth dumped her luggage in the entryway and marched into my kitchen. First things first. We need food. Real food. When did you last have a proper meal, Margaret? Helen brought casseroles. Casseroles. Ruth made a dismissive sound. We need comfort food. Real, stick-to-your-ribs comfort food. She started pulling ingredients from my refrigerator with the confidence of someone who'd been cooking in this kitchen since it was built. Diane, you're on vegetable duty. Margaret, you sit down and let us take care of you for once in your life. I tried to protest, but Ruth gave me a look that could have melted steel, so I sat at my kitchen table and watched my sister and daughter work. They moved around each other with easy familiarity, chopping and stirring and talking quietly. I caught snatches of their conversation, plans for dealing with Veronica, discussions about the money I'd lent Benjamin, speculation about what Marcus would say when he arrived. The thing is, Diane was saying, Veronica has always been controlling. Remember Benjamin's 40th birthday party? She planned the whole thing without asking him what he wanted, then got angry when he seemed less than enthusiastic about the golf-themed event even though he doesn't play golf. That's because everything is about her, Ruth said, chopping onions with more force than strictly necessary. Her image, her social standing, her ambitions. Benjamin is just a prop in the life she's trying to create. And poor Margaret here has been funding it all while getting treated like hired help. I'm not poor Margaret, I protested weakly. Yes, you are, Ruth said, not unkindly. You're too generous for your own good, too willing to see the best in people. It's one of your finest qualities and your biggest weakness. By the time they'd finished cooking, my kitchen smelled like love and memories, chicken soup with homemade noodles, fresh bread, and apple crisp. We sat at the kitchen table and ate together, and for a little while, I could almost pretend everything was normal. Then Marcus arrived. I heard his truck before I saw it, that distinctive rumble of his old Ford that he refused to replace despite having plenty of money for a new vehicle. He came through the door looking travel-worn and exhausted, his jaw set with determination. But when he saw me, his expression crumbled. Mom, he said, and suddenly he was hugging me, my big strong son who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan and never showed weakness. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here when this happened. You're here now, I managed, holding him tight. That's what matters. Marcus pulled back and I could see the fury barely contained behind his eyes. Where's Benjamin? Is he here? No, he left yesterday after the confrontation. Good. Because I don't trust what I might do if I saw him right now. Marcus sat down heavily in one of my kitchen chairs. On the drive here, I kept thinking about all the times Benjamin asked me for advice about dealing with Veronica. How she was too controlling, too demanding, how she was never satisfied no matter how hard he worked or how much money he made. And I kept telling him to stand up to her, to set boundaries, to remember what was really important. You couldn't have known, I started. I should have known he wouldn't listen. Benjamin's always been weak when it came to her. Ever since he met her, he's been so desperate for her approval that he'll do anything she says. Even if it means throwing his own mother under the bus. Diane brought Marcus a bowl of soup and he ate mechanically, barely tasting it. Ruth sat across from him, studying him with the shrewd eyes of someone who'd known him since birth. You have that look, Ruth said. The one you get when you're planning something. What are you thinking, Marcus? He set down his spoon and looked at each of us in turn. I'm thinking that Benjamin and Veronica have been taking advantage of Mom for too long. I'm thinking it's time someone taught them that actions have consequences. And I'm thinking I know exactly how to make that happen. Marcus, I started nervously. Mom, do you remember when I told you I had a buddy who's a forensic accountant? Well, I called him from the road. I told him about the $70,000 you gave Benjamin and Veronica. He said if there's no documentation of repayment plans, and if they've been misrepresenting their financial situation to get money from you, that could constitute fraud. I don't want to accuse my own son of fraud. Then don't think of it as accusation. Think of it as documentation. We're just gathering facts, Mom. Information. Knowledge is power, like Diane said. Marcus pulled out his phone. My buddy also has connections with private investigators. People who can look into Veronica's background, her business dealings, her financial situation. If she's been lying to you about needing money, we'll find out. This feels wrong, I said quietly. This feels like we're declaring war on my own son. He declared war first, Ruth said bluntly. When he let his wife tell you that you were too old to matter. When he stood silent while she humiliated you in your own home. When he chose her ambitions over your dignity. Margaret, I know you want to believe the best in your children. But sometimes your children disappoint you. And when they do, you have to decide whether to enable their bad behavior or hold them accountable for it. I looked around the table at my sister, my daughter, my oldest son. 3 people who dropped everything to be here for me. 3 people who were ready to fight my battles when I was too tired and heartbroken to fight them myself. What about Emma and Mason? I asked. Benjamin's children? What happens to them if we do this? We make sure they know they're loved, Diane said firmly. We make sure they understand that this isn't about them. And we make sure they grow up knowing that it's not okay to treat people badly, even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. It's Benjamin. He wants to know if we're all here at Mom's house. He says he and Veronica need to talk to all of us together. Tell him yes, Ruth said before I could speak. Tell him to come over right now. It's time we all had a conversation about what family really means. Marcus typed out a response. Within seconds, Benjamin replied, we'll be there in 20 minutes. Good, Ruth stood up and started clearing the table with sharp, decisive movements. We'll meet them in the living room. Margaret, you sit in Clarence's chair. The one at the head of the room. We want them to see you as the matriarch of this family, not as someone who can be pushed around. Ruth, I don't think. That's the problem, Margaret. You think too much about making everyone comfortable and not enough about demanding the respect you deserve. Ruth pointed at Clarence's old leather recliner, the one he'd sat in every evening to read the newspaper. The one that had sat empty since he died. Sit. I sat. Diane stood to my right, Marcus to my left, Ruth slightly behind me. We must have looked like some kind of tribunal, and maybe that's exactly what Ruth intended. The 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together in my lap. I kept thinking about Benjamin as a little boy, about the 1,000 ways I'd protected him and loved him and sacrificed for him. And I kept thinking about how none of that had mattered when Veronica told him to choose. Finally, we heard a car in the driveway. Footsteps on the walk. A hesitant knock at the door. Marcus answered it. Benjamin and Veronica stood on my front porch looking nervous and defiant in equal measure. Veronica's perfect facade had cracks in it. Her makeup wasn't quite as flawless as usual, her hair less precisely styled. Benjamin looked like he hadn't slept at all, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Come in," Marcus said, his voice cold. "We've been waiting for you." They stepped into my living room and stopped short when they saw our formation. Ruth standing behind me like a guardian. Diane and Marcus flanking me like soldiers. And me, sitting in Clarence's chair, trying to look more confident than I felt. "This looks like an ambush," Veronica said, attempting to sound indignant but not quite pulling it off. "This looks like a family meeting," Ruth corrected. "The kind you should have had before you tried to steal Thanksgiving from Margaret." "We weren't stealing," Benjamin started. "Sit down," Marcus interrupted. "Both of you. Sit down and shut up and listen for once in your lives." Benjamin and Veronica sat on the couch across from me, and I noticed how Veronica's hand reached for Benjamin's, squeezing it tightly. They were presenting a united front, just as we were. The battle lines had been drawn. Now the real confrontation was about to begin. The silence in my living room was suffocating. Benjamin and Veronica sat on the couch, looking small and uncomfortable under the collective gaze of my assembled family. I could see Benjamin's leg bouncing nervously, a habit he'd had since childhood when he knew he was in trouble. Marcus spoke first, his voice cold and controlled. "Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly. You came to Mom's house yesterday morning and told her she was too old to cook Thanksgiving dinner. You told her that her kitchen was outdated, her traditions were provincial, and her recipes weren't sophisticated enough for your corporate networking event. Is that accurate?" Benjamin opened his mouth, but Veronica cut him off. "That's not how it happened. We were trying to help Margaret. We were concerned about her health." "Don't lie," Diane snapped. "Mom told us everything. Every word you said. Every insult you delivered. You weren't concerned about her health. You were embarrassed by her." "That's not true," Veronica insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "We just thought it was time for a change, time for the younger generation to take over." "The younger generation?" Ruth's voice dripped with scorn. "You mean you. You wanted to take over so you could impress Benjamin's boss and turn Thanksgiving into a business transaction. Tell me, Veronica, when exactly did you start valuing networking opportunities over family?" Veronica's face flushed. "I don't have to justify my decisions to you people. This is between Benjamin, Margaret, and me." "Wrong," Marcus said. "This became everyone's business the moment you tried to steal our family tradition. This became everyone's business when you made our 70-year-old mother cry in her own kitchen. And this definitely became everyone's business when we discovered that you and Benjamin owe Mom $70,000 that you've never repaid." Benjamin's head snapped up. "How did you, Mom? You told them about the money." "Of course she told us," Diane said. "We're her family. Her real family. The ones who actually care about her well-being instead of just seeing her as a convenient bank account." "That money was a gift," Veronica said quickly. Too quickly. "Margaret offered it freely." "Did she?" Marcus pulled out his phone and started reading from his notes. $50,000 for the down payment on your house in Riverside Estates. You promised to pay it back when Benjamin's promotion came through. That promotion happened 18 months ago. Where's the money, Benjamin?" My son couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. "We were going to pay her back. We just had some unexpected expenses. Like your anniversary trip to Napa Valley?" Diane interjected. "Or the new Mercedes? Or Veronica's shopping trips to that boutique in the city that charges $500 for a blouse?" "How we spend our money is none of your concern," Veronica said, her voice rising. "It becomes our concern when it's actually Mom's money you're spending," Marcus shot back. And what about the $20,000 from last year? The temporary cash flow problem that required an emergency loan? Was that real, Veronica? Or was that just another lie to get money from a woman who's too generous to say no to her own son? I watched Benjamin's face crumble as the full weight of what they'd done seemed to finally hit him. Mom, he said weakly, I was going to pay you back. I swear I was. You just what? I asked quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since they arrived, and everyone's attention swung to me. You just kept finding reasons not to? You just kept prioritizing everything else over the debt you owed your mother? You just kept letting Veronica spend money that wasn't yours while I lived on a fixed income and convinced myself I didn't need new winter boots because you needed it more? You needed new boots? Benjamin's voice cracked. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked, I said simply. In 2 years since your father died, you've never once asked me if I needed anything. You've never asked how I was managing financially. You've only ever asked when you needed something from me. Veronica stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We came here to try to work out a reasonable compromise about Thanksgiving, not to be attacked about our personal finances. Sit down, Ruth commanded, and something in her tone made Veronica actually obey. You're not going anywhere until we're finished. And we're far from finished. Marcus stepped forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay back every cent you owe Mom. All $70,000. You have 6 months to make it right. If you don't, I'm prepared to pursue legal action for fraud and financial elder abuse. You can't be serious, Veronica said, her face going pale. That would destroy Benjamin's career. If his company found out he was being sued by his own family. Then I suggest you find a way to pay the money back, Marcus said coldly. Maybe sell that Mercedes. Maybe downsize from your $500,000 house. Maybe Veronica can stop shopping at boutiques and start shopping at Target like normal people. This is extortion, Veronica hissed. No, Diane corrected. This is accountability. Something you've never had to face before. Benjamin was crying now, his face in his hands. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for all of it. For the money, for Veronica's behavior, for not standing up for you. You're right about everything. I've been a terrible son. Yes, you have been, I said, and the words hurt to say but they were true. You've let your wife dictate how you treat your own mother. You've prioritized money and status over family. You've taken my love and generosity for granted and given nothing back in return. But I can change, Benjamin said desperately. I can be better. Please, Mom, give me a chance to make this right. I looked at my youngest son, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the child I'd protected from every hurt. And I realized that my protection had done him no favors. I'd shielded him from consequences for so long that he'd never learned to stand up for himself or for others. I don't know if you can change, Benjamin, I said honestly. Because change requires strength, and you've never shown me that you have the strength to stand up to Veronica. Even now, even after everything that's happened, you're still sitting there holding her hand like she's the victim in all of this. Benjamin looked down at where his hand was intertwined with Veronica's and slowly, painfully, pulled away. Veronica's head whipped toward him, her eyes wide with shock. Benjamin, she said, her voice uncertain for the first time. Mom's right, he said quietly. About all of it. You were wrong yesterday, Veronica. What you said to Mom, how you treated her, it was cruel and disrespectful and I should never have allowed it. You're turning on me? Veronica's voice rose in disbelief. After everything I've done for your career? After all the networking and social climbing and playing the perfect corporate wife? This is how you repay me? Everything you've done for my career? Benjamin stood up, and I saw something in his posture I'd never seen before, actual spine. Veronica, you've been using my career as an excuse to treat everyone around us like they're beneath you. My mother, my siblings, our neighbors, even my colleagues. Do you know what Constance Fitzpatrick told me yesterday after you called her? Veronica's face went white. She told me that she found your attitude toward my mother deeply disturbing and that Roland was reconsidering whether I was the right fit for the VP position. Not because of Mom. Because of you. Because your behavior reflected so poorly on me that they're questioning my judgment and character. That's not, she didn't, Veronica stammered. She did. And she was right to question it. Because what kind of man lets his wife treat his widowed mother like hired help? What kind of man stands silent while the woman who raised him is being humiliated in her own home? Benjamin turned to me, his face wet with tears. I don't know if I can change, Mom. But I want to try. And the first step is admitting that I've been weak and selfish and I've let you down in every way that matters. I felt my own tears starting again. Benjamin. Let me finish. Please. He took a shaky breath. I need to make this right. The money first, we'll get you the money back. I'll take out a loan if I have to, but you'll have it within a month, not 6 months. All of it. And I need to make it right with this family, with these traditions that I took for granted. I need to remember what Dad taught me about what really matters. Veronica stood up, her face twisted with fury. If you do this, Benjamin, if you side with them against me, our marriage is over. Do you understand that? I won't stay married to a man who doesn't have the spine to put his wife first. Then I guess our marriage is over, Benjamin said quietly. Because I should have put my mother first yesterday. I should have put family first. And if you can't understand that, then maybe we were never right for each other. The room fell silent. Veronica stood there, clearly expecting Benjamin to take it back, to apologize, to fall back into his usual pattern of giving her whatever she wanted. When he didn't, when he just stood there meeting her gaze with new determination, something crumbled in her face. Fine, she said, her voice shaking. Fine. Enjoy your precious family traditions and your outdated values and your mother who clearly can't let go of the past. I'll be at Riverside Estates packing my things. And Benjamin? Don't bother coming home until you're ready to apologize. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. In the silence that followed, Benjamin slowly sank back down onto the couch, his entire body shaking. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I got up from Clarence's chair and sat beside my son, pulling him into my arms the way I used to when he was small and the world had hurt him. He sobbed into my shoulder while I held him, and I could feel 42 years of love and disappointment and hope all tangled together in that embrace. You did the right thing, I told him softly. Finally, you did the right thing. That was Wednesday afternoon. By Wednesday evening, word had spread through the family that Thanksgiving was back on. Not the catered, sophisticated networking event Veronica had planned. The real Thanksgiving. The one with turkey and stuffing and all the traditions we'd built over 43 years. Diane and Ruth took over my kitchen with joyful authority, pulling out all the recipes and ingredients I'd abandoned. Marcus drove to Brennan's farm to pick up the turkey that was still brining. Benjamin stayed at my house, helping where he could, apologizing constantly, trying to find his way back into the family he'd almost lost. By Thursday morning, my house smelled the way it was supposed to, like cinnamon and sage and roasting turkey. The dining table was extended to its full length, with mismatched chairs pulled in from every room. My grandmother's cast-iron skillet sat on the stove, ready to make the cornbread for the dressing. The photo albums were back on the sideboard, waiting to be looked through after dinner. My family arrived throughout the morning. Diane's husband and kids. Marcus's wife Patricia and their teenage twins. Ruth's partner Carol, who'd flown in that morning. Even some of the neighbors came by with dishes to contribute, Helen's sweet potato casserole, Beverly's famous rolls, Tom and Linda from across the street with an apple pie. Emma and little Mason arrived with Benjamin, but without Veronica. Emma ran to me immediately, throwing her arms around my waist. Grandma. Daddy said Thanksgiving is back. Is it true? Can I help make the cranberry sauce like last year? It's true, sweetheart, I said, hugging her tight. And yes, you can absolutely help with the cranberry sauce. She ran off to the kitchen where Diane was already organizing the chaos of too many cooks. Benjamin stood in my entryway holding Mason, looking uncertain. "Is it okay that I'm here?" he asked quietly. "I know I don't deserve." "You're my son," I interrupted. "You're always welcome in this house. Always." He hugged me with his free arm, careful not to squish Mason between us. "I meant what I said yesterday, Mom. I'm going to make this right. All of it. Starting with the money, I took out a loan this morning. You'll have the full $70,000 by next week." "Benjamin, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. It was never a gift, no matter what Veronica tried to claim. It was a loan, and I should have paid it back years ago. I'm also going to start coming by more often. Not because you need anything, but because I need to remember what's really important. Family. Tradition. The things Dad tried to teach me that I somehow forgot." By 5 p.m., my house was full of people and noise and laughter. Diane was directing traffic in the kitchen, making sure everything came out on time. Marcus was carving the turkey with the same electric knife Clarence had used for 40 years. Ruth was orchestrating the table setting with military precision. The grandchildren were running around playing tag, their voices high and happy. I stood in the doorway between my kitchen and dining room, watching it all, and felt Clarence's presence so strongly it was almost like he was standing beside me. "We did okay, didn't we?" I whispered to the empty air. "We built something good. Something worth fighting for." When it was time to eat, we all gathered around the table, all 18 of us, just like I'd originally planned. Benjamin sat next to me, and I noticed how he kept looking around at his siblings and their families, really seeing them for the first time in what might have been years. Before we ate, Marcus stood up to say grace, as he'd done every year since Clarence died. But this year, he added something new. "And we're thankful for Mom," he said, looking directly at me. "For her strength, her generosity, her unwavering love even when we don't deserve it. For teaching us that some things, family, tradition, dignity, are worth fighting for. And for reminding us that being old doesn't mean being obsolete. It means being wise, being experienced, being the foundation that holds everything else together." Here, Ruth said, raising her glass. Everyone raised their glasses, even Emma with her juice box, and toasted to me. I felt tears running down my face, but these were good tears. Healing tears. We ate until we couldn't eat anymore, and the food was perfect because it was made with love instead of sophistication. We told stories and laughed at old jokes and brought out the photo albums. Emma helped me make the cranberry sauce, just like she'd asked. Benjamin helped Marcus with the dishes without being asked. Diane and Ruth harmonized badly to old songs while Carol accompanied them on her phone speaker. It was messy and loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. As the evening wound down and family started heading home, Benjamin stayed behind to help clean up. When it was just the two of us in the kitchen, he turned to me with serious eyes. "Mom, I need you to know something. I filed for divorce this morning." I stopped wiping the counter. "Benjamin, you don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. For Emma and Mason. For the kind of man I want to be instead of the kind of man I've been." He sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "Veronica called me 10 times today. Left voicemails saying I was throwing away our marriage over nothing, that I was choosing you over her, that I was being manipulated by my family." "What did you say?" I didn't answer. "Because she's wrong about everything. I'm not choosing you over her, I'm choosing to be a decent human being. I'm choosing to have values that mean something. I'm choosing to be the kind of father my kids can be proud of, and the kind of son my father would have been proud of." I sat down across from him and took his hands. "Your father would be proud of you now. I'm proud of you now. It takes courage to admit you were wrong and to change course. I just wish I hadn't wasted so much time. So many years of letting Veronica dictate how I treated everyone, of choosing her approval over everything else." He looked around the kitchen. "This house, these traditions, this family, it's what matters. And I almost lost it all because I was too weak to stand up to her. But you did stand up to her, I reminded him gently. When it mattered most, you found your strength. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, and I thought about how much had changed in just 3 days. The daughter-in-law who tried to steal my holiday was gone. The son who'd betrayed me was starting the long journey toward redemption. My family had rallied around me with fierce love and protection. And I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. At 70 years old, I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought for what mattered. I'd refused to be diminished or dismissed. And in doing so, I'd reminded everyone, including myself, that age doesn't make you obsolete. It makes you powerful in ways that youth can never understand. Epilogue, 6 months later. It's May now, and my kitchen is warm with spring sunshine. I'm testing recipes for this year's Memorial Day picnic, which will be at my house, as always. Benjamin comes by every Sunday for dinner, usually with Emma and Mason. He's dating someone new, a woman named Claire who teaches at the local elementary school and who treats me with genuine warmth and respect. The divorce was finalized last month. Veronica tried to claim she deserved half of everything, including the house she'd insisted they buy. But when Marcus's forensic accountant finished documenting all the money she'd taken from me under false pretenses, she settled quickly and quietly to avoid potential fraud charges. Benjamin paid back every penny of the $70,000, plus interest I didn't ask for but he insisted on. I put most of it in a trust for the grandchildren's college education. Some of it I used to finally buy those winter boots I'd needed. Last week, Constance Fitzpatrick called to invite me to lunch. She wanted to tell me that Roland had indeed promoted Benjamin to VP, not despite the family drama, but partly because of it. He showed real character, Constance told me. In the end, he chose integrity over convenience. That's the kind of person we want in leadership. And Thanksgiving? We're already planning it. Emma has requested 3 different kinds of pie. Marcus is talking about deep frying a turkey outside for the first time. Diane wants to finally try making those homemade rolls from Grandma's recipe. Ruth has already booked her flight. I'm 70 years old, and I'm no longer afraid of being called too old. Because I've learned that age isn't about limitation, it's about legacy. It's about the traditions we build, the love we give, the strength we show when someone tries to diminish us. My daughter-in-law said I was too old to cook for Thanksgiving, so I canceled the entire meal. And in doing so, I saved my family from losing what mattered most. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to accept how someone else defines your worth. Sometimes love means knowing when to fight. And sometimes, the best way to honor tradition is to be willing to disrupt everything to protect it.